Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott and I've been living on Horizon Forbidden West. Thankfully, and massive thanks over to Sony themselves, we had access to the game for the last couple of weeks, so I've just been playing every minute I had until Sifu came along. I was playing Horizon Forbidden West and I managed to get through it in around about 30-ish hours. Now that's not to say that the game isn't a hell of a lot bigger, there's a hell of a lot more to do, but overall, for the sake of this review, Horizon Forbidden West is the weirdest game to sort of pin down and talk about in a review capacity because it's very solid, it's very technically proficient, it's very much recommendable and something that you should play, but at the same time, it doesn't have anywhere near as much of that X factor, that sort of next level 5-star, oh my god, you need to get the console to play this, as Horizon Zero Dawn did. And that comes from a variety of different factors, whether it be the fact that the story is just not as engaging, it's not as enjoyable moment to moment as the original game was, or the fact that on the gameplay side, it's kind of just more of the same. And I'll break these things down as I go, because for me, it's not that Horizon Forbidden West is a disappointment necessarily, but it didn't blow me away, and it's sad. I think that I love Horizon Zero Dawn so much. I love this lore. I think Aloy's a great character, and I love all the stuff that they set out in the original game that doesn't really maintain in this second game. And obviously, we don't know what the Horizon franchise is going to be going forward. We don't know whether this is the second installment in a trilogy or whatever, but this is a propulsive installment of a franchise. This is something that needs to take this game that was incredibly important and very much enjoyed by a hell of a lot of people in 2017 and keep that momentum going. It's been 5 years since that game. Breath of the Wild 2 is about to drop, hopefully later this year as well, and it feels like Horizon, Breath of the Wild 2, 2017's games were a big deal. So it's interesting looking at what Sony and Guerrilla have done here, because they have mostly played it quite safe. For the most part, this feels a bit like the Ubisoft open world formula, where it's a whole bunch of stuff to do in the open world, lots of question marks, lots of side missions to go hoover up, lots of different components that you can go find that are attached to the creatures themselves, the robot dinosaurs that you can break apart and loose and everything else. But what offset that in Zero Dawn was an incredible story. It was all about the fact that Aloy was waking up as part of this Nora tribe in this post-apocalypse, trying to figure out the different customs of the tribe itself and what had happened in the past. Well, how had humanity got to this place that was all of a sudden Earth was populated by dinosaurs and there was all these different customs of the Nora tribe, and how did she fit into this, etc., etc. And that provided a really cool story hook. That was a really cool narrative payoff. And that game is incredibly satisfying. They actually, Guerrilla play as many cards as possible, making sure that you know the answers to all the questions that are being asked in Zero Dawn, and they only leave one behind, which is always going to be the case when the franchise went forward anyway. But as soon as we knew that we were going to be getting more Horizon, for me it was always, okay, what can they possibly do that, you know, expands this and keeps it going and keeps you hooked for what's next? And it is worth saying that the way that the lore gets expanded, the directions the story goes are insane. That's something that's obviously going to be held back for spoiler discussions, ending explained, whatever. Those things are very interesting, and I think it's worth pointing out that PlayStation Studios, as an overall, you know, part of the wing of Sony PlayStation, is a much bigger deal. Horizon is a much bigger deal now as an IP, as an entity, than it was back in 2017. You know, you've got the Horizon Call of the West VR experience that's coming up. You've got the movie that's been greenlighted or greenlit. You've assumed you've got more games coming in the future, so this needs to support a lot more than it did beforehand. And to that end, whether it's the open world design or the fact that the story mostly plays things quite safe, it is a very safe feeling game. Like I said, it's technically proficient, very much recommendable, but at the same time, it kind of feels like the best DLC you've ever played. And that's not that isn't to say the massive insulting thing at the game. It just means that it feels like more of the same in the best way possible. It's not that there's anything against that, but that's what stood out to me. Now, the thing that's worth pointing out is that the game doesn't really get going until about the 14-hour mark. It's also worth pointing out that the amount of lore and narrative backbone that's in this follow-up to Zero Dawn, it's very heavy with lore, with references. You kind of need to know exactly what went down in Zero Dawn and have a working vocabulary of all the different terms, all the different entities that were at work in the original game, all the different AIs that were governing the planet, everything else, to go into this game. It doesn't really pull any punches. You get a bit of a recap when Aloy's telling other people what she's been through, but you benefit massively knowing exactly what's going on. And like I said, it takes about 12 to 14-ish hours before things really come together and start meshing, where for me, it took that long before I was like, okay, I get what this game is, I get what you're going for. And interestingly, there's a bit of a parallel to Mass Effect 2, or Mass Effect in general, the idea of this hub space where all these different characters start coming in as the story unfolds, and you can just go between them, see where they're at, go on loyalty missions, find out more about them, and overall flesh out the individual characters in the middle of this wider story as to what's happening, after the events of Zero Dawn. One major thing that stood out to me, and like I said, I mentioned the fact that this is a pillar for PlayStation Studios overall, is the mainstreamification of the Horizon feel. Now, it's not to say that the overall feel of Horizon as an IP, that mesh of, furtive humanity discovering this world full of robots and technology and, what happened, this mystery, that stuff isn't there. It very much is. As the story unfolds, you get to hang out with the Tenakth, which are the new tribe that's housed in the west of the world itself, and you get to discover all sorts of really cool things, different interpretations of the past that have now been, made into religious figures, or maybe they've taken a whole belief system from the fact that a group of people found a museum display that now they think is representing a higher power or something like that. That is the crux of why Horizon was such a cool idea and such a cool IP, and I feel like they could have done more with that overall. Like I said, the game takes so long to get going, and in terms of, like I mentioned, the mainstreamification of it, it almost feels like the PlayStation Studios, the PlayStation branding is not holding it back, but is a very safe way to go. If you've played a lot of PlayStation games recently, the first party stuff, you'll notice a homogenization across the board, from Ghost of Tsushima through Uncharted through God of War. It's over-shoulder cameras, it's light crafting components, Last of Us 2, it's workbenches. I actually laughed quite a lot when a character just sort of says to Aloy, hey, you might want to use the workbench to get some crafting done. It feels like we've heard these bits of language in everything. And in regards to Aloy herself, there are parts where she's just straight up Nathan Drake at the beginning. I think it doesn't really give a very good first impression, because it makes her feel like they're just aiming for this nebulous PlayStation character type thing, and it's a bit off-putting. Like, you have her sort of, going like crap, 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 as if she's Nathan Drake, or something like that. And I think over time, Aloy very much comes into her own. She's a great character, and I love the story. I love the lines that she's given in Zero Dawn and what she gets to do here. But that stuff is worth pointing out. It all folds into the idea that this is a very safe sequel, and that this is very much more of the same, like I said, in the best way possible, but it is still more of the same. There are no overall creative or gameplay risks here. In fact, if we're boiling down new gameplay, you have a grappling hook, which isn't really that responsive. The animation overall to use it, for me, takes too much time. I prefer my grappling hooks being nice and snappy, Halo Infinite or Pray for the Gods style. And the only other gameplay thing that's added here is underwater segments, which, underwater stuff doesn't have the best reputation anyway, and it's done well enough here, but it's not in the 30 hours it took me to clock the story. There was one underwater section that was incredibly memorable, but overall it didn't elevate the feel of Horizon. It didn't make me dive underwater when I was in the middle of an average fight against one of the creatures to factor that stuff in. It was fine. It was there. You can hide in it's like a stealth kelp underwater, so you can hide to do underwater stealth. Underwater tall grass apparently is the future, and you can factor that stuff in. But overall, like I say, you're not playing Forbidden West going, oh my god, it's such a step up from Zero Dawn, because it just isn't. To expand on the creature side of things, they're fantastic. Obviously, if you know the story of Horizon, and not to get too deep in lore spoilers for Zero Dawn, but you know why those creatures are there, what the designs are based on, what the AI that creates them, etc. is going for, and that sort of spirals out here into all sorts of different designs, hybrids of, wildlife things that would be on the planet right now, and past dinosaurs that are being brought back through this AI algorithm to create other creatures that you might see out in the open world, or maybe you fight as part of the storyline. Overall, the creature designs are the best thing about Horizon. The overall world is very inviting, very colorful, and very memorable and identifiable, but the creatures themselves, tackling them, shearing different parts of them off, they've made a point here of giving you more weapons, more usable parts of the machines that come off, different cannons, different lasers, whatever it is, that you can then turn back on the creature to finish them off, and that gameplay feel is incredible. That stuff is what Horizon does extremely well, especially when it's alongside a story component that's propelling you to see the next creature, the next big reveal, the next whatever it is to get lost in. Lastly, it's worth pointing out that, and I think this will be fixed with a day one patch, it was a little bit ropey, and we still had quite a few bad facial animation, not bugs, but just a lack of facial animation, just Aloy looking around during a cutscene that was quite an emotional cutscene. There's a lot of heavy material in here, a lot of personal journey stuff, lots of different characters bearing their soul to you, and when everyone else is animated very well and Aloy's just sort of barely reacting to it. That was one of the biggest issues with Zero Dawn, and it's a bit of a shame that it's carried over to here. Now, I assume there'll be a day one patch that might sort this stuff out, but it's annoying, it's disappointing that the main protagonist, one of your most important faces in the game, sometimes just isn't animating. And that's alongside the fact that I had a couple of mission triggers that didn't work, and the game did crash about 4 times overall. You would assume the general stability stuff will be sorted out. I'm playing, like I said, pre-release, so here's hoping that stuff gets sorted, but I'm flagging it because it happened to me. Overall, to wrap it up, Horizon Forbidden West, it'll be talked about a hell of a lot. It's the first major PlayStation 5 game of the year. It's one of the biggest reasons to own a PlayStation 5. I haven't played the PlayStation 4 version, but it is a standout, gorgeous looking game with an incredibly inviting, beautifully rendered world that is worth checking out. It's just that the overall, ethos that I came away with was that they played it fairly safe. And it's not to say that the story doesn't go places, because it really, really does. I just can't talk about them because of spoilers. But overall, the story side of things wasn't enough to elevate the overall package in a way that I feel Zero Dawn was. I feel like because all the mystery and all that different stuff was answered in the first game, there's way less to play with here. There's way less to pull you along narrative thread-wise than there was in the original. And for me, it very much suffers from that. They've done their absolute best with what they could, considering just how satisfying that first game was. But overall, to completely square it off, this game just did not blow me away as much as Zero Dawn. I think that overall, gameplay-wise, it is better, it's tighter, it plays very smoothly. But if we're talking memorable stories and reasons to check out a certain story, there are more of them in Horizon Zero Dawn. That's not to say that this game is not absolutely gorgeous, though. Go check it out if you're a fan of Horizon. You'll obviously be playing it anyway, and I'm still going to be recommending it. But like I said, my overall thoughts are very much mixed, and I'm curious what the rest of the world thinks as they get to play it. I'm going with 4 stars. I think that Zero Dawn was a 5-star game. As I did that, I meant 5, but still, I'm going with 4 for this because I just don't think all the different elements mesh in such a fluid a way as the original game did. For now, though, I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, and I will catch you very soon.